Bribery and extortion are bad for business. Bribes introduce risk and uncertainty, and most importantly, they're illegal. Companies can't enforce bribe-tainted contracts. Once you start paying, it can be difficult to stop. A clear assessment of the business opportunity, accurate books and records, trust, they're all lost. You can't know what you've paid for or what you're going to receive, and if you're caught paying a bribe, or even associated with people paying bribes, you risk damaging your company's reputation and your own. So why bribe?
You know, if you have a very, very short-term perspective, you just think about yourself. This might seem attractive. The problem is it can backfire badly. Even if you're retired, even if you left the company, you can still be taken to court for what you've been doing before. And your company can be severely put into difficulties very shortly afterwards. If you look at the example of Siemens, those people who have built the slush funds, they're all around. Frankly, it has ruined their careers. And the company hasn't really profited from that.
The penalties associated with bribery or a violation of the FCPA can be difficult to believe. The Siemens penalty was $1.6 billion. KBR and Halliburton, $579 million. Baker Hughes, $44 million.
The consequences of a violation of the FCPA can be quite severe. Under the statute itself, there can be lengthy terms of imprisonment that can be imposed, as well as severe financial penalties. In addition to the sanctions under the statute itself, there can be very severe collateral consequences. Civil shareholder litigation can arise. Debarment and exclusion from government contracting work can have a devastating effect on a company's vitality. And so altogether, the combination of sanctions can be quite severe.
Companies can be suspended or debarred from doing government business. They can lose their export control privileges. There can be significant impact on their stock value, especially in this day and age.
Companies can also face disgorgement as a penalty.
In the FCPA arena, the disgorgement amount is based on the amount of the profit that the company made by paying the bribes.
And there's more.
There are a variety of impositions of things like compliance programs, compliance monitors, all sorts of reporting requirements, sometimes changes in business structure. The government is much more involved in how a company's business functions going forward after a settlement than it ever has been before.
Having a representative of the government embedded in your business is rarely a good thing. So what do you need to know to be sure your company isn't involved in a bribery scandal? 1. Adopt a clear policy and robust processes. Make sure your company has a straightforward and compelling compliance policy. The objectives should be clear, and it should be specifically tailored to your business and to the countries in which you operate.
I think my best advice to in-house compliance professionals would be make sure your compliance program is intelligently designed and risk-based. Make sure you've got strong core values and support of your management, and make sure that you've got adequate resources, even though compliance is a cost center and not a profit center. What this means for companies is that they really need to take to heart the importance of having an effective FCPA compliance program and to commit the necessary resources to it. Because should a problem arise, the absolute best defense that a company could possibly have is to be in a position to demonstrate to the department and to the SEC that the company takes FCPA compliance seriously.
2. Ensure the right tone at the top. Make sure your company has the right tone at the top, one that emphasizes the fact that bribery will not be tolerated for any reason.
I think tone at the top is hugely important. If a company's board, if a company's management doesn't take these issues seriously, then they can't expect their employees to do so. I've seen in many companies an introductory video to the live training where the CEO talks about why this is so important. That's great. I've seen CEOs go around and to certain select large audiences within the company, in big companies. I've seen the CEOs go around and take part actively in the compliance lectures given and answer questions and talk very candidly about why this is so important. And I think that's really effective.
And the tone should continue down the chain of command and out into the field.
At the end of the day, when you're a poor sales manager facing a solicitation, You will not go back to the website of your company and see what the CEO said in the General Assembly with a nice speech about corruption. You will ask your boss, the regional officer or the local officer, what shall I do? And this will be the person who will be instrumental in saying, no, there is a line, or there is no line, or this is.
3. Undertake appropriate due diligence. A key component of an anti-bribery program is due diligence, especially on commercial intermediaries and as a part of a merger or acquisition. Find out as much as you can.
Due diligence on all of your foreign partners, to some extent. The guy you're buying a can of oil from, not so much. But the sales rep that you're sending out into the field to represent your company, an extensive amount of due diligence on that person. As much due diligence as you can do, again, on your joint venture partners and on your distributors as well. I think that's very important.
There are sound business reasons for doing due diligence as well. When considering a merger or acquisition, a company with a robust compliance program may be viewed as a better value than a company without one.
Yeah, I think that a robust compliance program in a business, particularly a business that's operating in emerging markets, is going to increase the commercial value of that business, because we're going to be in a situation where we're going to have greater comfort that the revenue stream that we're seeing when we're actually looking at that company is an accurate revenue stream. You know, that the contracts that they are obtaining have been obtained through proper means.
4. Provide tailored training. Provide clear training tailored to the employee's responsibilities and the region in which they operate.
There needs to be training of personnel so they understand in plain and simple terms what it is they're expected to do and how they're expected to go about doing it. It's important that there be an understanding that a company has core values and that corruption is inconsistent with those core values and won't be tolerated. And very fundamentally, that the company would rather not have the business than pay the bribe.
5. Think globally. Don't imagine that this is just a U.S. issue. International and U.S. regulatory and enforcement agencies have new levels of cooperation. Through information sharing, legal cooperation, and enhanced technology, enforcement has increased exponentially over the past 5 years, and it's expected to continue to grow. And there are other trends as well.
We get very, very good cooperation from countries in all parts of the world.
Increasingly, we have foreign bribery cases that touch multiple jurisdictions. We have 1, 2, 5, sometimes more different regulators from different jurisdictions looking into the same company, in some cases the same conduct or overlapping conduct.
6. Investigate thoroughly. If you uncover an inappropriate payment or allegation of an inappropriate payment, you should investigate quickly, thoroughly, and aggressively. Learn as much as you can about the credibility of the allegation.
There's no substitute for an independent, thorough investigation. Don't jump to conclusions. Don't decide whether or not it happened or didn't happen. If you think the allegation has some level of credibility, get a document preservation order in place. Go out there, interview people properly, have a methodology in place. Don't jump to conclusions, learn the facts, and make your judgment once you learn the facts. Don't skip any steps.
7. Consider voluntary disclosure. Voluntary disclosure may make sense if you've uncovered a pattern of abuse in your company. If you don't self-report, you run the risk of the problems being discovered, or a disgruntled employee may report what he knows. Either way, if you find a problem, you have to fix it.
Voluntary disclosure, I would say, is among the most difficult issues that companies have to deal with. Once a company is faced with a fact pattern or a situation, the first thing it has to do is decide, is it credible? It has to also decide if it has an obligation to disclose to the federal government. Some industries, defense industry, and some regulated industries actually have an affirmative obligation to disclose these sorts of things. If your outside auditors claim that your internal controls are weak, they may force a disclosure.
8. Cooperate with investigators. If you find yourself in the midst of an investigation, cooperate fully.
Most persons don't perceive the FBI knocking at the door as a joyous occasion. When we knock on your door, two things are probably true. We've done a lot of homework. We know exactly what we're looking for when we knock on the door. And we're not going to go away.
9. Weigh the cost of non-compliance. A bribery scandal can have far-reaching costs for a company, fines, debarment, disgorgement, and irreparable reputational damage.
The disgorgement amount is based on the amount of the profit that the company made by paying the bribes. And the significant piece, I think, in FCPA cases is that the ill-gotten gain or the profit can be quite large. The amount of the bribe payment may be relatively small. It could be $1 million or even less than that. But in a lot of our cases, the actual profit the company made by getting that business or avoiding those costs can be tens of millions of dollars.
I think maybe the most worrying thing is what happens to your reputation. If you are perceived to be, as we were, a leader in technology, a leader in services, and a good corporate citizen, both in Germany and throughout the world, it's painful for the employees when their neighbors and friends ask them what's going on at Siemens and how could they work at such a dreadful place.
10. Remember that bribes are paid by individuals. There are many nuances to anti-bribery law, but at the end of the day, it boils down to one thing. Bribes are paid by individuals.
There are two major myths about corruption that people have to understand. One is that everybody does it. The fact of the matter is that good companies don't. They don't have to. They know how to say no, and they still do very well. The other myth, and this is what you hear all the time, is from the employees who are caught doing it. They'll say, I was only doing it for the company. I didn't put in any money in my own pocket. And that's just not true. They made their numbers, they got their bonuses, they got promoted based on numbers that they put up by paying bribes. They didn't just help the company, they helped themselves, and frankly, they exposed the company to criminal sanctions.
And employees bear the greatest risk if they engage in improper payments.
A company is really concerned about itself, which is harsh to say, but it's true. The corporation's responsibility is to its shareholders, first and foremost, and not to its employees. And so if a company finds that it's in its interests to roll over on its employees, give up all the bad information it has on its employees, and point its finger at the employees, it will do so. And at the end of the day, if an individual is indicted, obviously the individual serves jail time alone. He won't have the company in there with him. If an individual is forced to pay a fine, he or she bears the brunt of that fine, whether to the SEC or to the DOJ, on his or her own. Companies are not able to indemnify their employees for the payment of these fines. So it's fair to say that the stress and the burdens and the peril that individuals who choose to engage in these practices feel and will have brought down upon them is great.
It is possible to do business successfully anywhere in the world without making improper payments, and there are many multinational companies doing it. They've been able to maintain strong reputations by creating and enforcing a culture of anti-bribery compliance.
I believe it is possible to do business virtually anywhere. You may not be all the business you want. Undoubtedly, you will not be able to service everyone and do everything. But it can be done. It just requires extreme diligence, extreme caution.
It's the right way to do business, and it's the better way to do business. You're going to be more competitive if you can say to your customers, we don't cheat. Customers increasingly expect that of you. You're going to be a better company because you're going to attract better people, and you're going to have a stronger culture and a more enduring culture. And you're going to be better for your communities. You're going to be respected in those communities, and business is going to be respected in those communities for having a high integrity culture.
My message to anybody who's confronted with these problems is fairly simple. It's not worth it. It's not worth it to your company, it's not worth it to you personally, and both in the short term and the long term, you don't need to pay bribes. You still get the deal.
As you've seen, bribes and extortionate demands are toxic transactions that can ruin the reputation of a company and the lives of the individuals involved. Both U.S. and international regulatory and enforcement agencies have become more vigilant in investigating and prosecuting these crimes. It isn't a risk worth taking. It's important to understand the laws that apply to you and to avoid the temptation of crossing the line to get a deal done. The short-term gain isn't worth the long-term consequences. It's just bad business. I'm Alexandra Rogge. Thank you for watching.